Before we get started, hey there, I'm Jason Linett, and maybe you've heard me say this before. The more we're all successful, the more we're all successful. And the one thing that will grow our hypnosis profession better than anything else is to have more of you out there helping your own clients and thriving in your own hypnosis businesses. That's why I'm inviting you to join our private community, exclusively for listeners of the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast. We have several thousand members in the group, and this is where recent guests of the program share additional resources related to their episode. It's a positive community with hypnotic professionals from all around the world, so it's a great place to get your questions answered. And as a benefit, as soon as you join, I'm going to share with you the best of the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast archives. And listen to this. It's absolutely free to join. Go to this website, group.worksmarthypnosis.com. Go there right now, answer a few quick questions, and I'll personally be there to welcome you into this helpful community. Be sure to join today. That website is group.worksmarthypnosis.com. I became much more confident in the work that I do as I focused more on becoming world-class at not just a bunch of different methods, but instead really, really skilled at the specific methods that I wanted to be using to help my clients. Hypnosis helps people take back control of their lives. But here's the thing. Too many hypnotists struggle to get consistent results with their clients or grow their hypnosis businesses. I'm Jason Linett, and after more than 2 decades of building a thriving hypnosis practice, I created this podcast to help you do the same. Whether you're just starting your hypnosis journey or if you're ready to scale your business to the next level, you're exactly where you need to be. Welcome to Work Smart Hypnosis. There are 2 simple words, 2 very simple, straightforward strategies that actually explain, as I've seen, all of hypnosis. And I know that's a bold promise to make to you right from the start here, though it's true. Every hypnotic intervention, every hypnotic method you would ever run into comes down to a very simple formula. This is true whether it's an induction. This is true if it's a hypnotic deepener, a moment of creating hypnotic phenomenon, or even advanced strategies such as hypnotic age regression, parts therapy, and then basically everything else that's out there. And that's entirely what this week's episode of the podcast is all about. And I'm about to do something that I haven't done here in a while, which is I'm going to encourage you, of course, to continue listening to this episode, especially listen to the rest of this introduction. But then for the rest of it, you could listen to me here, or you could go over to worksmarthypnosis.com/455. That'll bring you over to the show notes for this week's episode, The 2-Word Secret of Hypnotic Change. And that's where, rather than just listen, you could actually go back in time and watch a video replay of the content you're about to listen to. Basically, what I've done this week is I've kind of cropped off a specific segment of my training, lifted it up in full, and published it out there for all of you to not just listen to, but also watch. The video of this is also over at worksmarthypnosis.com/455. Though before we get into the actual 2-word secret for hypnotic change, let's lay a foundation here. Let's lay a foundation in terms of a very simple question. How do you make hypnotic change actually stick? And let's even remove the word hypnosis from this equation. How do you make any change actually stick? Well, it turns out there's 2 simple formulas to make this happen. Sometimes it's 100% one of them, sometimes it's 100% the other, and then I would say most of the time it's some mixture of the 2 separate things. The 2 primary factors to create lasting change are repetition and intensity. So let's talk first for a moment about repetition. This one kind of explains itself. Just keep doing something, and eventually it feels natural and normal. It becomes the habit, and it just kind of sticks. There are things that you do in your day-to-day life that you didn't do at one point, and then when you started to do them, they were kind of awkward, but then over time, they just became a part of who you are, and that's exactly what we mean by repetition. I became a morning person. Here's a quick example. I became a morning person by repetition. As I was leaving behind a career in another industry, and as I was starting my business officially as a hypnotist about 20 years ago, it's about the time I realized, hey, this game of I don't really function well until 12 noon, that wasn't going to be a match to be an entrepreneur. So for a couple of weeks, I set the alarm and I genuinely forced myself out of bed in the morning and got myself to do something active early in my day. And as a result of that, now I'm a morning person. So there's an example of repetition. For intensity, the other one here, I'm going to point to a favorite story that illustrates this, which is about the time I was then full-time in hypnosis. My grandfather found out about this, and he eventually said to me, "Oh, that makes sense, because you got me to quit smoking." Now, at this point, I had to zoom in and go, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Oh, when you were little, you said to your dad, his son, he said that I'd said the phrase that I don't want to go to grandpa's house. He smells bad." And in that one moment, Arnold threw away the pack of cigarettes a day. He threw away the cigar that he would smoke on the drive home from his work, and he threw away the pipe that was this family heirloom that he would smoke from after dinner. Now, at this point, I am going into the mode of wanting to find all the details of the story, and I'm asking about cravings, I'm asking about difficulty, and he just kind of shrugged his shoulders and went, "No, something in that moment just made more sense to me, and I just moved on, and that was it." I've talked about my journey losing weight several times on this podcast over the years, and it's where at one point I had lost the majority of the weight. There was about maybe 30 pounds of body fat that was left over. And it's the moment where my son, Max, was a newborn baby at the time. I was walking up the stairs and I had to sit down holding him because I was out of breath. And the way that I would now describe this was that in that moment, emotionally, I lost the last 30 pounds of body fat. Emotionally, it was gone. Tactically, I then had to then put in the effort of eating right, moving right, and everything else to then actually do it. But that last 30 pounds then came off so much easier than the rest of it. So in that moment, something happened, something clicked in my brain, and I could not go back to the old way. So take this as a bit of a model, by the way, because this is also something to speak to your clients about. Because here's the two different models of change, and what is it that we represent in one-to-one personalized services? We represent intensity. So look at these two stories, by the way, of things that hypnotically shifted, but did not necessarily involve direct hypnosis. So yes, there are people who create miraculous changes in their life, and they do it without our assistance. Through hypnosis, we are helping to facilitate that intensity shift on purpose. That's what we're doing within our work. Again, I'm planting some seeds and setting you up for this two-word secret. The other part, in terms of lasting change, I would kind of put this into the category of what we know as hypnotists as just simple compounding. But let's talk about compounding, not just from the filter of how we layer in hypnotic suggestions and methods, but through a category just simply referred to as psychodynamics: thoughts, feelings, and actions. So what are the thoughts in the mind? What are the feelings in the body? And then what are the actions that they're doing? And think of these three things. The way that I describe these three things is like they're the three legs of a tripod. And if you knock out one of the legs, the tripod structure will likely then easily fall down. So when you're approaching a change, very often, well, most people out there, when they're trying to make a change on their own, they're trying to only do it by one of these three components. So thoughts, feelings, actions. The person trying to quit smoking, who doesn't have the 4-year-old grandson complaining about how much they stink, they might slap on the nicotine patch, and that's an action, but that's not necessarily changing the thoughts and the feelings. The person who has this emotional shift, and maybe that's part of the reason they were holding on to the excess body weight, well, that's going to be a change in terms of their possibly thoughts and or feelings. But at the end of the day, their actions also have to shift. So this is what I mean by compounding the change by addressing all of these components. And by the way, real quick, back to repetition and intensity. Repetition. When I say reinforcement, reinforcement doesn't necessarily mean that they have to keep listening to a hypnotic audio forever. Because simply put, the fact that the person is now living in the change and feeling better, that is also a form of repetition. Basically, everything I've just now said can be summed up in one centralized idea. The new story that is being created has to overwrite the old story. Now, some of you at this point might be wondering, wait, are these the two words? No. It's because, again, we're about to go through time and space back to a workshop I taught in December of 2024, where I presented this opening segment first, and the audio got a little bit distorted. So that's why I'm doing it fresh here as the introduction. In a moment, we're about to go into the classroom and go into this whole thing involving the two-word secret. Though I want you to listen carefully to the stories that begin this episode once we dive into the core content here, because when you really get down to it, so many of us in hypnosis, especially those in the early stages, are kind of putting up all these different techniques on various pedestals. We're putting up all these techniques into this idea that, oh, because I use this protocol, that's why I get results. I'm here to tell you that at the end of the day, all of these methods come down to a very simple linguistic formula that as soon as you understand it, as soon as you recognize it, you don't just understand how the technique works and also why the technique works, you also start to see a much better perspective of how we customize for our client in real time. This is a segment that actually came from my Work Smart Hypnosis live and online training, and especially when you hear this simplification of the themes of hypnosis. This isn't work complicated hypnosis, this is work smart hypnosis. And part of that is the reason and the classic story as to why when I do these training events, the Work Smart Hypnosis Live specifically, about half the people are brand new and learning hypnosis officially for the first time in a formal environment. Meanwhile, the other half of the people are the folks like many of you that maybe are already seeing clients, perhaps already have a significant amount of training, and yet you're starting to find those places where it's time to move away from rigid protocols, move away from scripted techniques, and really just refocus and just dial in exactly the how and the why of the work so that now customizing for the person in front of you becomes a whole lot easier. If that's something you want some help doing, head over to live.worksmarthypnosis.com. That's where you can find all the details of the next Work Smart Hypnosis Live event. Again, for the rest of this here, you can keep listening to me in this format. I'd love it. Or head over to worksmarthypnosis.com/455, because on the show notes page of this episode, we're going to put the video of this two-word secret presentation. That way you can also watch it along the way too, because I got fancy and I put the words on the screen. So let's dive into it. This is session number 455, the two-word secret of hypnotic change. Has your hypnosis client ever said this to you? I felt relaxed, but I don't know if I was hypnotized. If you've heard that before, it means that one of the most critical elements was missing from your hypnosis session. You might have done every hypnosis technique and every hypnotherapy method correctly, but you've accidentally sabotaged your chances of your client getting their desired result. Here's the good news. It's an easy problem to fix. Check out this website, power.worksmarthypnosis.com. This is where you can get instant access to my Hypnotic Phenomenon Power Pack featuring the Hypnotize with Conviction program. It's a foolproof system to reliably create magical moments of hypnotic phenomenon with all of your clients, whether you see them in person or even online. What this does for you is help to build greater conviction that the desired change is already in motion, and even better, it means that your client will be able to actually feel the change taking place. How cool is that? It's these types of magical moments that helped my clients to become the people who sent me referrals and left me 5-star reviews. And I'm inviting you to grab this low-cost method that you can learn today and put to use with your next client. So go to power.worksmarthypnosis.com. Now, I'm going to take this into action because I could just kick off this event in this opening chunk and just talk at you in terms of theory and premise and go, oh, it's easy. Repetition and intensity, thoughts, feelings, and actions, help them write a better story. Good luck, you're certified. No. Rather than that, we want to turn this now into something you can truly take into action. The story behind what we're about to do is something that I used to do this like in a 5 or 6 day or multiple week hypnosis training certification program. I used to do this as like something as a booster on day 3 or 4. And ever since one specific experience, those of you who have gone through my Work Smart Hypnosis Live training, you know that like this is the first thing we now do. And I'm going to do it with you all here. The story goes I was in Virginia at the time. She was a medical doctor, she was a dentist, and her husband in retirement goes, I want to do that hypno thing with you. And so they commuted from Miami to Northern Virginia, took the training. And when we did this next part, originally, Diane was in her mid 60s. She goes, well, I told my husband, this is who we need to train with. That, he's a younger guy, but I've seen him online and the way he can just freestyle the hypnotic language. It's clear that he's inventing it in real time, but it's not scripted and it sounds I've never seen someone do it that smoothly. When we then launched into the 2-step secret of all hypnotic methods, Diane words, not mine, she goes, oh, that's all you're doing? Oh, shit, I can do that. That's easy. So, hey, let's do it right now here. Whether we're talking about inductions, whether we're talking about deepeners, whether talking about change work or emergence, they all fall into the same pattern. The other story that sets this up is somebody who, in the midst of the pandemic, he was already seeing clients online. His 3 kids decided they wanted to get into the family business and do hypnosis too. And this was a newer segment when he went through the training the second time. And it was that he goes, somehow in like those 10 minutes, Jason, you completely amplified the quality of every other training I had gone through, while at the same time ruined all the others in a positive way. Because it used to be putting a specific technique up on a pedestal. This is the one technique that I use. It just works. This is the one thing that I do that's just so much more effective. And when we went through this thing that we're about to go through here together, all of a sudden it was, oh, they're all basically the same formula. And I'm going to intentionally reveal the steps of this. And again, those of you that are trained and seasoned and working clients, stick with me here. Do not hear this and go, oh, I know that part. I'm going to get ready for the next spot. No, we're going to approach it from a brand new direction. No matter the technique, no matter the method, no matter the school of thought, no matter what different name someone slapped on a technique to try to convince you it's something brand new. Paul, was that too direct? No matter what it is, it's the same formula. As you X, that helps you to Y. Now, in a simple format here, we're talking about pacing and leading. As you do this thing, pacing statement, I'm going to give you a more workable definition of this here in a moment. But as you're doing this thing, that's the pace. It helps you to outcome, lead. So in that case, here's the outcome. Now, I'm pointing this out, and I'm going to show you something here on the screen, which the quick version of the story was a time that we were hosting a guest training. And he came in from out of town, and all of a sudden, the tone in the room got very cynical and negative. No one taught you people about linking suggestions? Jason, what are you teaching these people in Virginia? Wow. And then he taught it, and we're all like, yeah, that's basically pacing and leading. Uh, so different schools of thought refer to the same methods, but by different names. So I'm about to put 3 things on the screen. They're all the same. Pacing and leading is the same as a cause and effect. A cause and effect is also the same as an action followed by a result. So I may slip sometimes and refer to it as cause and effect language or action and result language. It's always the same pace and lead equation. So again, these are not 3 of separate things. This is the same thing 3 times over. Just to make sure that we're clear on that before moving forward, just give me a thumbs up here in the group that, again, I'm talking the same thing over and over. It's just I give you that so you don't run into the scenario of, I don't care if you're saying fractionation versus fractionalization, which one school of thought says. I care you can actually do the technique. What's that? We'll get to it if we have time. So here's the definition of pacing. It's hitting the right button on your computer screen. There we go. Pacing, something verifiably true without judgment. So in the chat, switch your computer screen over like I'm about to do to the gallery view. If you're on Zoom, top right, if you hit gallery, it's going to switch it to everybody. And what I want you to do is in the chat, drop in a pacing statement. And let's do this off of something we can observe that is sensorily verifiably true and doesn't contain any judgment. I'm going to cheat on the first one and say Jeff Broomfield has a beautiful background behind him just because it's purple. And okay. But I can simply say as a pacing statement, notice the background behind Jeff. And what we're looking for here is a full body, unconscious, kind of a nod. Notice the glasses that Casey is wearing. You can notice the books on the shelf behind me. Become aware of the light behind Cheryl Ellman's head. I see Jane says in the chat, you can feel the chair beneath you. Yeah, beautiful. Now, here's what we're resisting here. Here's what we're avoiding. We're avoiding what I put up here a moment ago. Let me switch the view over. We're avoiding the judgment statement. You can feel the comfort of the chair beneath you. That's introducing judgment. And judgment, neither good judgment or bad judgment, just judgment of any kind. Opinion would be another word here. Now I have to switch the screen over to see what you're saying in the chat, Jeff. Where is it? Where's Brenda? Notice the sharks behind Brenda. Oh, there's a lot of you. I'll find it later. Become aware of the shark behind Brenda. There's too many of you. I can't find it. Become aware of the, there's the shark. Okay, I see her. Thank you. There we go. Spotlight. That is a nice shark. There you go. Cool. Gotcha. Now, let's do a few more of these. Again, sensory, verifiably true. As in, you can look, you can observe it, and just there it is. Notice the wall to the side of Faith. Notice the difference in lighting behind Anne Charlotte's background. Notice the sunset and the bridge. So resist the urge to start to put the whole puzzle together here. For right now, we're just going after the pacing statement, which is just what's the part that's absolutely true. Let's do a different version of this, though, which is now you're talking to your client, you're engaging with them, you're talking to them, and they say to you, well, I've tried to quit smoking before. I was able to quit for like 3 months, but then I fell back into it. They say to you, I feel completely fine driving on streets in like busy cities and on highways. It's when I'm driving over a bridge, that's when this fear comes up. They say to you something of the nature of when that anxiety pops up, it feels like this cold, icy, collapsing on itself feeling in my chest. Anything the client brings to the experience that we feed back, again, without judgment, without opinion, serves as a pacing statement as well. So we can start to make some assumptions here, which would be that we're mostly all here for the same reason. I have an agenda that I've been beginning to talk throughout this, though in the chat, make another pacing statement, but this time bring in something that is likely true of the audience that's here with us right now. It's your ability to create that pacing statement to get in sync with the specific mind of your client. The same is true whether it's the change. The same is true whether it's the sales dialogue. The ultimate sales conversation begins in the language of the consumer in their words. So, what is that statement we can make in terms of this audience that's here right now that may bring in a slight bit of judgment because now we're bringing in some knowledge here? We're here to continue to learn about doing hypnosis confidently. Most of us are here for the same reason. Oh, Lisa, going for the ultimate ambiguous statement on that one here. Michelle, you're here to get a new perspective. Yeah. Members of this summit are aware they want and need some level of confidence. Nice. Becoming aware of how we're all here to learn together and build our confidence. Jana says, notice the sound of birds in the background. I don't have birds. But Jana, we can actually edit yours in a very simple way. Less is more. Become aware of the sounds around you. Now we've got that full body, unconscious, yep. Notice how absorbed most of us are as we listen. Cool. Become aware of the sounds outside of the room. Yeah. So I point this out because this is that first step of the equation. And let's begin to bring in many of the techniques that we might already be well aware of. As you focus on that feeling, that's a pacing statement. As I count backwards from 5 to 1, pacing statement. If we're doing a classic Dave Elman induction, as you let your eyes open and close, the actions and the instructions you give are also a pacing statement. So getting clear just on this one part, first of all, is where now we can go into leading, which is the suggestive outcome. And I point this out as a very simple thing to kind of kick us all off here, because as you look at this pacing and leading dialogue, notice what I said earlier, that I became much more confident in the work that I do as I focused more on becoming world class at not just a bunch of different methods, but instead really, really skilled at the specific methods that I wanted to be using to help my clients. It's not going to let me hover over my screen here, but that's okay. I will point, because as you focus on that feeling inside of you, that feeling is connected to every time you felt that way before, and you can follow that feeling to an earlier time, an earlier situation where you felt that way. Holy crap, we just simplified hypnotic age regression. As you're focused on that internal conflict, some of you already know where I'm going here, you can become aware as if there's two parts of you working in opposition. Now, here's the catch to this, and this is the freestyle of this. The previous lead can become the next pace. This is not meant to be hypnotic suggestion Russian roulette. Someone in the chat throw in there just a specific issue that we as hypnotists often would end up helping with. Just call it out just by the category in the chat. And whatever pops up is the one we're going to do this off of here. So just what's the category that we would often work with? Brandon said smoking first. Let's go with that. What's the pace? Now, we can facilitate pacing moments. This is why there's a video of mine of a client online where he goes, Jason, his quote, "I thought you were full of shit when you told me that I can go outside and smoke my last cigarette because we've got plenty of time. And you told me I could do that and it would be my last. And I thought you were insane, but it's now been 8 years." As you throw out those cigarettes, it tells all parts of your mind that you're ready to move on. Now, am I telling you just make the suggestion once? No. This is where we're bringing in compounding. Oh, this is where we're bringing in repetition and intensity. Because as you throw out those cigarettes, it signals to all parts of your mind that you are ready to make this change. And as you're, take the previous lead, turn it into the next pace. And as you're ready to make this change, you're becoming aware of all the reasons why this is the time that you're not just trying to quit smoking or stopping smoking. This is the moment that you're quitting once and for all. And even as you bring your attention to your breathing, for no other reason except that I suggest it, that's a little language pattern I might overuse sometimes, for no other reason except that I suggest it, you start to notice a changing quality to that breathing. And as you're noticing that changing quality, it's as if you feel your body, your lungs, your bloodstream just rapidly healing and restoring itself. And as you're aware of all of these changing sensations within your body, it's opening up every bit of awareness that as you walk out that door today, this thing is done. It's set, it's through, you never have to smoke again. There are some who would say, as marketing angles to sell you into their strict protocols, oh, direct suggestion hypnosis doesn't work. Well, if you don't know what actually makes the process work, then that's the result. But instead, even inside of the advanced strategies, these same principles are always there. Now, as a little bit of extra credit, I don't have a thing on the screen for this, but a complex equivalence is the same cause and effect, pacing and leading relationship. Yet the difference is we're using one other word, the word means, MEANS. So the fact that you're all here today means that you're serious about amplifying your confidence as a hypnotist. Uh-huh. And the fact that we're beginning right now with this rather foundational thing in terms of truly understanding the pacing and leading relationship of language that makes every technique work without exception. It means as you find yourself working with a client for the next time, you're realizing that there's a greater skill set already there within you. And it's a matter of opening up that communication and simply listening to the client. And as you're aware of what your client is now saying, it helps you to begin to utilize their specific model of the world, their specific perceptions, their specific understandings, so that now you have a greater clarity as to where they would like to go. And as it's clear where they would like to go, it becomes even easier to bring them there. I'm just going to pause real quick. This is not just for my um, ego and confidence here. Is this helpful in terms of, again, setting a foundation for where we're about to go and taking everything, no matter the method, back to the core basics? And one of the reasons why I lean into this, if so, just drop me a yes over in the chat. One of the reasons I kick off with this here is that what do you do with someone for quitting smoking and they go, oh, I use this technique? Or other schools of thought. Um, what's the best induction? Oh, I have this thing. It's printed on pink cardstock, and I just read it, and people go into hypnosis. Well, whatever those pieces of paper might be, the fact is you could go back to them and find these specific principles inside of them. As soon as you know how the technique works and why it works, as well as a preview of where we're going this week, what else also might be going on from a persuasive standpoint, you then start to see where are the places where we can better customize. Now, I'm not going to commit hypnotic blasphemy this week and go, hey, this technique doesn't work for that reason. No, instead, it's going to be, hey, this technique also gets a boost because this is a thing that's also going on. Because as you're doing perhaps classic style hypnotic age regression, it means, okay, complex equivalence, there's classically a moment where your client is beginning to speak to themselves. And it creates one of the environments for the first time ever where that client is now doing direct suggestion and hypnosis on themselves. And it doesn't matter how clever you think you are or however clever you think I might be, it's unleashing what's already inside of them that really amplifies that change. Karen Hand's going to be here on Thursday with her You Don't Have to Be the Wizard. My version of that is Work Smart Hypnosis with less letters. Inherently Lazy Hypnosis.com was way too many, and we went with the shorter one there. Love the review being all that we already know and clarifying. Yeah, and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And then are you using the specific finger pointing from left to right for the viewer? No, Nancy, I'm just using that as a teaching mechanism here. It's my bet on why hypnosis done online is just as effective, if not more, than in person. Why? Once the hypnotic process begins, you close your eyes and listen to me. So in that case, I could be pointing all I want, but I'm just doing this right now here for all of you. If it helps you, then absolutely. Yes, fast paced. Wish I had an outline to remember it all. Getting old is overrated. Uh, my take on that, Figgy, is just how do we simplify this down so that I can look at a technique and go, oh, wait, here's the moving pieces. Here's the part that actually affect the change. The fact is, as you begin to recognize that most anything I share with you is going to be using the same core formula because you cannot not use it. It's basic communication. Hey, before you leave today, could you start the dishwasher? Hey, when you come over later today, could you bring dinner? That's pacing and leading. And instead, as you're interacting with anything I share with you, you're going to start to notice how the same core formulas begin to clarify themselves time and time again. And even as you listen to other methods and other principles and appreciate the work that they've done, you also begin to recognize the same core foundational steps really don't change along the way. And even as you put a message out to your audience and speak to them about the benefits of doing hypnosis for personal change, you start to realize that the journey towards inspiring people to take action and hire your services as a professional are a whole lot easier than you would think. And even as you might look at all the different methods that are out there for attracting clients, they all come back to the same core linguistic principles, no matter what platform it might be, whether it's in person, whether it's online, whether it's anything in between there. So I lay this as a foundation diving in because at this point, we've got some targets we're going to begin to focus on here. How do we really lock in that change? We've got some places we're going to fill in from story, thoughts and feelings and actions to repetition and intensity, and whatever the methods are. It's going to come back to the same core linguistic principles. And by doing so, you not just understand what techniques to do and how they might be effective, but more importantly, how it works, why it works, and more specifically, where to modify along the way. So, hey, we're just getting started here. And let's take a few more moments and talk about what actually creates hypnotic change. And specifically, in the intro to this episode, I talked about understanding the how and the why of hypnosis. That as soon as you understand how the technique works and also why it works, that's where you become much more effective about when and where to actually then customize the actual technique. Though in the content you just listened to from the Work Smart Hypnosis Live event, I talked about this two-word secret, pacing and leading. In the intro to that, I told two stories, if you remember back. One was about the dentist, oh, you're so smooth at this, followed by, oh, that's all you're doing. And then the other guy who said that I basically had improved upon all the other trainings while also ruining the other trainings he had done. There's a third story that I think is worth sharing here. That it was someone who I was doing some private consulting with at one point. We were rebuilding his website. We were also working on his change strategies and the sessions. And there was this one theme that kept coming up in our conversations, that whenever we got onto the topic of what he did in his hypnosis sessions, he would talk about this healing blanket of relaxation induction. And the way that he kept talking about it was just magical and poetic. And some of you will immediately turn on this story, I know, because I would say that he was reading a script. Though at the end of the day, here's what I care about. He was getting results. It was working for him. Though it was almost like this safety blanket. It was almost like this piece of comfort that he had, even down to the point that it was printed on like this 110-pound cardstock light blue pastel paper. And he had even referenced at one point how the edges were worn. The paper on the second page had like a coffee stain on it. And he goes, I probably have the thing memorized at this point, but still, the fact that I'm holding it and reading it just makes me just go into the zone with the client. And did you hear that statement I just used? The fact that I was reading it means that I just went into hypnosis with my client. Pacing and leading, specifically a complex equivalence. Okay, yes, he was hypnotizing himself. And all you people who just turned off, by the way, because I said it was a script, relax. Seriously, just listen to the actual content of the story and don't get caught up on that popular hook that everybody likes to crush. Again, he was getting results. That's what I care about. Though at one point, he then also elected to go through the Work Smart Hypnosis Live event. And toward the end of it, I gave him a bit of a challenge. And I set this up in a very specific way. That from my background working in professional theater, I was the stage manager, I was coordinating rehearsals, I was then running the show. The director would then open the show and basically hand it off to me. But in the early stages, the actors would sit around and do what's called table work. And whether you have experience in this or not really doesn't matter. But what's important to know is that the actors will very often divide a scene up into the individual beats. So here's this segment of a scene. Here's this segment of a scene. And it's helpful to kind of go into the classic, what's my motivation? What is my character trying to achieve? And what I said to this guy was to say, pull out that healing blanket of relaxation induction script on the 110-pound blue pastel paper cardstock and go through it and just like make a copy of it because he didn't want to write on his. He made a copy of it and he kind of drew a little bit of a line where the transitions were. You know, here's an easy correlation for you all out there because I'm assuming you don't know the specific method he was referring to. But like think of a Dave Ellman induction. There's a moment where you're doing the beat on relax the eyelids, test them, they won't work, quit testing, send that relaxation down across your body. Here comes the next beat. In a moment, you're going to open your eyes and close them. Do that 3 times. Then the next beat, pick up the arm, let it flop down, or some other variation, of course, for a Zoom session. So that's what we meant by the beats. But then I encouraged him to go into that document and then start to unravel the techniques. Look for the paces, look for the leads, look for the complex equivalencies, look for the places where he could look at a segment and go, oh, this part is now progressive muscle relaxation. Oh, this part is now imagery. And this part, and he had this beautiful epiphany to go, oh, wait, this part is actually autogenic training. And this became a beautiful moment where he then told me later on that he was no longer holding on to the paper. As he then pulled out the system, as he now pulled out the framework, as he then understood exactly how and why the technique actually worked, that's where he became even more confident. That's where he broke free of the old shackles of how he was feeling comfortable doing the process before. That's where that confidence took off, and that's also where his business truly began to grow. So again, as soon as you understand the how and the why of hypnosis, that's where the change really occurs inside of you. Thank you for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett. The more we're all successful, the more we're all successful. I've made that statement for years. It's why I do this show. And here is one thing that you can do today to help do your part. Go to worksmarthypnosis.com/podcast. Go there and make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd leave a review. Your feedback helps other hypnosis professionals find the show. Subscribe and share your thoughts today at worksmarthypnosis.com/podcast.